Hello and welcome to Lyla Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the vibrant city of Seoul in South Korea. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The morning air in Seoul was crisp and clear, the kind of autumn weather that made Lyla grateful she had packed a light jacket. She woke early, the sounds of the city already humming outside her hotel window. Traffic moving in purposeful streams, the distant chime of a crosswalk signal, voices carrying up from the street below. October in Seoul was proving to be exactly as she had hoped. Cool enough for comfortable walking, warm enough to enjoy being outside. She dressed in layers and comfortable shoes, knowing she had a full day of exploration ahead. Her hotel was in Jongguno, placing her within walking distance of some of the city's most historic sites. After a quick breakfast in the hotel, rice, kimchi, grilled fish, and the kind of banchan that made even a simple morning meal feel abundant, she set out toward Gyeongbokgung Palace. The walk took her through streets that were a fascinating mix of old and new. Modern office buildings stood next to small restaurants with timmed-up windows. A convenience store sat beside a traditional tea house. Seoul seemed to exist in multiple time periods simultaneously, and Lyla found this layering appealing, the way the city held its history while constantly moving forward. As she approached Gyeongbokgung, the palace walls came into view, high stone barriers topped with traditional tiled roofs. The main gate, Guengwamun, was massive and ornate, painted in the vibrant colors of traditional Korean architecture: reds, greens, blues, and gold. Guards in traditional costumes stood at attention, their uniforms bright and formal. Lyla bought her ticket and entered through the gate, emerging into the vast courtyard beyond. The palace grounds were enormous, a sprawling complex of buildings, courtyards, and gardens. Mountains rose in the background, providing a natural frame for the scene. Despite the early hour, there were already visitors, some in rented hanbok, the traditional Korean dress, posing for photos. She consulted the information board and learned that the changing of the guard ceremony would begin in about 15 minutes. She made her way to the area in front of Guengwamun Gate, where a crowd was beginning to gather. The ceremony, when it began, was a precise and colorful spectacle. Guards in elaborate uniforms, some in red and blue, others in yellow and red, marched in formation to the sound of traditional drums and wind instruments. Their movements were sharp and synchronized, their expressions solemn. The uniforms were stunning up close. Embroidered details, brass buttons, plumed hats that added height and grandeur. The ceremony had a theatrical quality, yes, but there was also something genuine about it, a connection to centuries of tradition, a respect for the rituals that had once been performed daily, when this was the seat of royal power. Lyla watched as the outgoing guards were replaced by the incoming shift, each movement carefully choreographed, each position held with military precision. After the ceremony concluded, she wandered deeper into the palace grounds. The main throne hall, Junjeongjeon, sat at the heart of the complex, elevated on a stone platform and surrounded by intricate stone railings carved with zodiac animals. The building itself was magnificent, sweeping tiled roofs with upturned eaves, painted wooden brackets supporting the structure, and an interior that spoke of royal authority and artistic refinement. Lyla spent over an hour exploring the various halls and pavilions. There was Gonghoeru, a pavilion built over a large lotus pond, its reflection shimmering in the still water. There were residential quarters, where the royal family had once lived, their rooms now empty, but still elegant, in their simplicity. There were gardens with carefully placed stones and ancient trees that had witnessed the centuries of Korean history. The palace was peaceful despite the visitors. People moved quietly, respectfully, taking photos but maintaining a sense of decorum. Lyla found a bench near one of the smaller courtyards and sat for a while, watching the way light moved across the buildings, the way the traditional architecture seemed to blend with the natural landscape rather than dominate it. Eventually, she left the palace grounds and began walking north toward Bukchon Hanok Village. The neighborhood was just a short walk away, though the transition from the palace grandeur to the intimate scale of the Hanok village was striking. Bukchon was a preserved neighborhood of traditional Korean houses, their distinctive tiled roofs and wooden structures climbing up the hillside between the palaces and the modern city. The alleys were narrow and winding, and Lyla found herself walking uphill more often than not, the incline steep enough to make her grateful for her comfortable shoes. The hanok themselves were beautiful, low buildings with elegant roof lines, their walls, a combination of wood, stone, and white plaster. Some had been converted into tea houses, galleries, or guest houses, while others were still private residences. Signs requested that visitors be quiet and respectful, and Lyla appreciated this reminder that people actually lived here, that this wasn't just a museum. She climbed to one of the neighborhood viewpoints and found herself looking out over the rooftops, a sea of gray tiles, punctuated by the occasional curved roofline of a larger hanok. Beyond, modern Seoul rose in glass and steel, the contrast between old and new stark and somehow harmonious. A small gallery caught her attention, its door open, displaying ceramics and calligraphy inside. Lyla stepped in and was greeted by an elderly woman, who nodded and gestured for her to browse. The ceramics were simple and beautiful, bowls and cups in shades of white and celadon green, their glazes subtle and refined. The calligraphy on the walls featured Korean characters Lyla couldn't read, but the brushstrokes were bold and expressive, art even without understanding the meaning. She continued wandering through Bukchon alleys, occasionally getting turned around. The neighborhood layout was organic rather than planned, following the contours of the hill. At one point, she found herself in a dead-end alley and had to backtrack, passing a group of tourists who seemed equally lost but cheerful about it. By the time she descended from Bukchon, it was past noon, and Lyla was ready for lunch. She had been looking forward to trying Korean comfort food, and she found a small restaurant on a side street that looked promising, The exterior was modest, but through the window she could see it was busy with locals. Always a good sign. Inside, the restaurant was warm and slightly cramped. Tables close together, the air rich with the smell of simmering stews and grilled meat. A server approached with a menu, and Lyla studied the options. She recognized a few dishes from her research: sundubu-jjigae, bibimbap, japchae. She decided on sundubu-jjigae, the soft tofu stew, and the server nodded approvingly. The stew arrived in a stone pot, still bubbling fiercely, the surface red with gochugaru. A raw egg sat on top, slowly cooking in the residual heat. Alongside came the usual array of banchan: kimchi, pickled radish, seasoned spinach, bean sprouts, fish cake. A bowl of rice completed the meal. Lyla mixed the egg into the stew and took a careful spoonful, mindful of the heat. The flavor was complex, spicy but not overwhelmingly so, with the silky texture of the soft tofu and the richness of the broth. It was exactly the kind of food that felt nourishing, the kind you had want on a cold day or when you needed comfort. She ate slowly, enjoying the ritual of Korean dining, the way you could combine bites from different banchan dishes, the way the rice acted as a neutral base for the more intensely flavored items. The restaurant hummed with conversation around her, the clatter of spoons against metal bowls, the server calling orders to the kitchen. After lunch, Lyla walked toward Insadong, a neighborhood known for traditional crafts, tea houses, and street food. The main street, Insadong Gil, was pedestrian only and lined with shops, selling everything from handmade paper to traditional teas, from Buddhist artifacts to modern crafts with traditional motifs. The atmosphere here was different from Bukchon, more commercial, more tourist-focused, but still interesting. Lyla browsed through shops, selling beautiful hanji paper, watching demonstrations of traditional crafts, admiring displays of Celadon pottery. Street performers entertained small crowds, a man creating elaborate sugar figures, another making traditional taffy, pulling and stretching the candy with rhythmic precision. And then she smelled it, the sweet, warm scent of hotteok. She followed her nose to a small street food cart, where a woman was making the Korean sweet pancakes on a large griddle. The woman worked quickly, pressing bowls of dough flat, waiting for them to cook, then flipping them with practiced ease. When they were done, she had transferred them to paper sleeves and hand them to waiting customers. Lyla joined the short queue and soon had her own hotteok, still warm in its paper wrapper. She found a spot on a nearby bench and took her first bite, the crispy exterior giving way to a sweet, molten filling, brown sugar, cinnamon, and nuts. It was messy and delicious, and she ate it carefully, trying not to let the filling drip onto her jacket. The sweetness and warmth of the hotteok felt like a small celebration, a perfect street food moment. She watched people pass by, students with backpacks, elderly tourists examining souvenirs, locals hurrying through with shopping bags. The October afternoon was pleasant, the sun warm but not hot, a light breeze carrying the mixed scents of street food and incense from a nearby shop. After finishing her hotteok, Lyla continued exploring Insadong, eventually wandering down one of the smaller alleys that branched off the main street. Here, the shops were smaller and more specialized: antique dealers, galleries showing contemporary Korean art, tiny tea houses with traditional interiors visible through open doors. By mid-afternoon, Lyla was ready to head to Myeongdong, a neighborhood famous for shopping, especially cosmetics and skincare. She caught a subway. Seoul system was impressively clean and efficient, with signs in both Korean and English, and immersed in the heart of Myeongdong shopping district. The energy here was entirely different from Insadong cultural focus, or Bukchon, historical calm. Myeongdong was about commerce and beauty, its streets packed with cosmetic shops, fashion boutiques, and street food vendors. K-pop played from speakers outside stores, and shop assistants stood on the sidewalk, offering samples and encouraging shoppers to come inside. Lyla had booked a facial at a well-reviewed spa on one of the side streets, a small luxury she had been looking forward to. She found the building and took the elevator to the third floor, where the spa occupied a peaceful space that felt worlds away from the busy streets below. The reception area was minimalist and calm: white walls, wooden accents, the subtle scent of something herbal in the air. A receptionist greeted her with a warm smile and led her to a changing room where she traded her street clothes for a comfortable robe and slippers. The facial room was dimly lit and quiet, with soft music playing, something ambient and soothing. The esthetician introduced herself and the treatment in accented but clear English. It would be a hydrating facial, she said, focused on deep cleansing and moisture, using traditional Korean ingredients alongside modern techniques. Lyla lay back on the treatment bed and let herself relax as the esthetician began to work. There was something deeply peaceful about surrendering to someone else's care, about letting go and trusting the process. The esthetician's hands were skilled and gentle, moving through each step with practiced precision: cleansing, exfoliating, a warm towel, a cooling mask, massage, essence, more massage, moisturizer. Time seemed to slow down. Lyla's mind drifted, thoughts coming and going without urgency. She was aware of the esthetician movements, the sensation of products being applied and massaged in, the occasional warm towel pressed against her face. It was meditative, restorative, exactly what she needed after days of travel. When the treatment ended, Lyla felt like she was emerging from a pleasant dream. Her skin felt soft and hydrated, and there was a looseness in her shoulders she hadn't realized she had been missing. The esthetician walked her back to the changing area, recommending products that would help maintain the results. Back in her street clothes, Lyla emerged into the spa retail section, where the products used in the facial were displayed alongside other Korean skincare items. She had been curious about Korean beauty products, the famous multi-step routines, the innovative ingredients, the focus on prevention and long-term skin health. A sales assistant approached and offered to help, and Lyla found herself guided through the basics of a Korean skincare routine. The assistant was knowledgeable without being pushy, explaining the purpose of each product type: the double cleanse, the essence, the serums, the moisturizers. the sleeping masks. She recommended specific products based on Lyla's skin type and concerns, pulling bottles and jars from the shelves and explaining their key ingredients. Lyla ended up with a small collection: a gentle oil cleanser, a hydrating essence, a snail mucin serum that the assistant swore would change her life, and a rich sleeping mask. The assistant wrapped everything carefully, placing samples of other products in the bag as well, and bowed slightly as she handed everything over. Outside, Myeongdong was even busier than before, the late afternoon bringing more shoppers into the district. Lyla wandered through a few more cosmetic stores, comparing products and prices, occasionally picking up additional items: sheet masks, a lip tint, a cushion compact. The shopping was strangely soothing, the ritual of testing products and making small decisions, requiring just enough attention to keep her present, but not so much that it felt stressful. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, Lyla decided it was time to head to N Seoul Tower for sunset. She caught a bus that wound up the slopes of Namsan Mountain, the road climbing steadily through trees that were just beginning to turn autumn colors. The tower stood at the summit, a tall observation tower that had become one of Seoul's iconic landmarks. Lyla bought a ticket for the observation deck and joined the crowd waiting for the elevator. The view from the top was spectacular. Seoul spread out in all directions, an enormous city, filling the valley and climbing the surrounding mountains. The Hans River cut through the center, its bridges connecting the north and south banks. Buildings stretched to the horizon, a dense urban landscape that spoke to Seoul's size and vitality. As Lyla walked around the observation deck, the sun began its descent. The light changed gradually, the harsh afternoon brightness softening into gold, then orange, then pink. The city below began to light up, buildings switching on their lights, street lamps flickering to life, the whole metropolis transforming into a constellation of light. Other visitors crowded the windows, everyone trying to capture the moment with their cameras. Lyla took a few photos herself, but mostly, she just watched, appreciating the way the city revealed itself differently as day turned to night. There was something powerful about seeing a city from this height, about understanding its scale and complexity, about recognizing that each point of light represented lives being lived, stories unfolding, the constant hum of human activity. The famous lovelocks covered the railings around the observation deck exterior area, thousands of padlocks left by couples, each one inscribed with names or messages or dates. It was a bit cheesy, perhaps, but there was also something touching about it, about the desire to mark a moment, to declare something permanent in a changing world. As the sky deepened into twilight, Lyla descended from the tower. She had saved the best for last, a visit to a jimjilbang, a Korean spa and bathhouse. She had been curious about this aspect of Korean culture, the communal bathing and relaxation facilities that seemed to occupy such an important place in daily life. She had chosen a jimjilbang in the Gangnam area, a large facility that was open 24 hours and offered everything from hot baths to saunas to sleeping rooms. The subway ride took about 30 minutes, and by the time she arrived, it was fully dark outside, the city alive with neon and movement. The jimjilbang entrance was on a busy street, and Lyla paid her entrance fee at the counter, receiving a key for a locker and a set of loose cotton clothes to wear in the communal areas. The attendant explained the layout: bathing areas on one floor, saunas and relaxation rooms on another, a food court on the third floor. Lyla headed first to the women bathing area, following the signs and the flow of other women. In the changing room, she undressed and stored her clothes in the assigned locker, then entered the bathing area, wrapped in her small towel. The space was large and steamy, tiled from floor to ceiling. Several pools of different temperatures occupied the center: cold plunge, warm bath, hot bath, very hot bath. Along the walls were shower stations, where women were washing, scrubbing, or just sitting under the spray. The atmosphere was completely unself-conscious. Bodies of all ages and types, women going about their bathing routines without any apparent concern about being seen. Lyla found an empty shower station and began her own routine, washing thoroughly before approaching the pools. She started with the warm bath, letting her body adjust to the temperature, then moved to the hot bath. The heat was intense, but not unbearable, and she felt her muscles loosening, tension seeping out of her shoulders and back. Other women came and went, some chatting with friends, others silent and meditative. An elderly woman sat in the hot pool with her eyes closed, completely still. Two younger women were laughing about something, their voices echoing off the tile. A mother was gently washing her small daughter's hair, the child patient and trusting. There was something deeply peaceful about the scene, the communal aspect of it, the way everyone was engaged in the same basic human activity of cleaning and caring for their bodies. It felt ancient and modern at the same time, this ritual of bathing that must have been performed for thousands of years, but here took place in a thoroughly contemporary setting. After cycling through the pools, hot to cold, back to warm, Lyla returned to the changing room and dressed in the provided cotton clothes, loose shorts, and a t-shirt in a cheerful yellow color. Then she headed upstairs to the co-ed sauna area. This floor was designed for relaxation and had a variety of theme sauna rooms, each at a different temperature and with different materials. There was a jade room, its walls lined with jade stones, that supposedly had healing properties. A salt room, where the walls were made of Himalayan salt bricks. An ice room, kept at near freezing temperatures. A clay room with a floor of heated yellow clay. Lyla tried several, spending time in each before moving to the next. The jade room was intensely hot, and she could only stay for a few minutes before needing to cool down. The ice room was a shocking contrast, and she found herself laughing at the sensation of going from extreme heat to extreme cold. The clay room was her favorite. The heat was moderate, and there was something grounding about lying on the warm clay floor, feeling the heat seep into her back. Between sauna sessions, she rested in the main relaxation area, a large room with heated floors, where people lay on mats, some sleeping, others reading or watching TV. The atmosphere was incredibly relaxed. Families with children, couples, solo visitors like herself, all sharing the space in comfortable silence. Eventually, Lyla made her way to the food court, where she ordered a simple meal, cold buckwheat noodles, and a hard-boiled egg, classic jimjilbang food. She found a spot at one of the communal tables and ate slowly, still feeling the residual warmth from the saunas. Her skin flushed and her body deeply relaxed. The food was refreshing and satisfying. The cold noodles, perfect after the heat of the saunas. She watched the other diners, people in their yellow or pink jimjilbang uniforms, looking equally relaxed and content. There was something egalitarian about the whole experience, the way everyone wore the same simple clothes, the way the facility was designed for comfort rather than luxury. After eating, Lyla returned to the relaxation area. She found an empty mat in a quiet corner and lay down, pulling a thin blanket over herself. The floor was warm beneath her, and the ambient sounds of the jimjilbang, the soft murmur of voices, the occasional opening and closing of sauna doors, the gentle hum of ventilation, created a cocoon of white noise. She closed her eyes, not really sleeping but not fully awake either, drifting in that pleasant in-between state. Her body felt loose and heavy, completely relaxed. Her mind was quiet, thoughts floating by ball without sticking. She was aware of other people nearby, but not bothered by their presence. There was something comforting about sharing space with strangers, all of you resting together. Time passed in an unmeasured way. At some point, Lyla got up and tried another sauna, the charcoal room, where the walls absorb toxins or negative energy, or something equally intangible, but somehow believable in this context. She sat on the heated floor and felt the sweat bead on her skin, then evaporate in the dry heat. Later, she returned to the bathing area, moving through the pools again, taking her time. The cold plunge was bracing, making her gasp, but it was followed by the hot bath, and the cycle of cold and hot felt cleansing, refreshing. Eventually, thoroughly relaxed and slightly waterlogged, Lyla returned to the changing room and dressed in her street clothes. It felt strange to put on normal clothes again after hours in the loose cotton, jimjilbang uniform. She gathered her shopping bags, the skincare products from earlier, which she had stored in her locker, and headed for the exit. Outside, the night was cool and crisp, a sharp contrast to the warm humidity of the jimjilbang. Seoul streets was still busy. This was a city that didn't sleep early, but Lyla felt removed from the hustle, cocooned in her own sense of deep relaxation. She caught a taxi back to her hotel, watching the city pass by through the window. The neighborhoods changed as they drove, commercial districts giving way to residential areas. Then back to the commercial district where her hotel was located. Everywhere there was light and movement and life. Eventually thoroughly relaxed and slightly waterlogged, Lyla decided to stay a bit longer at the jimjilbang. She wasn't ready to leave yet, to trade this cocoon of warmth and peace for the bustling city outside. She returned to the main relaxation area and found an empty mat in a quiet corner, away from the television screens and the areas where families gathered. She lay down on the mat, pulling a thin blanket over herself. The floor was warm beneath her, radiating a steady, comforting heat. Around her, Others rested in similar states of relaxation, some reading quietly, others with their eyes closed, a few with earbuds in listening to music only they could hear. The sounds of the jimjilbang had become familiar now, the soft patting of bare feet on warm floors, the gentle whoosh of sauna doors opening and closing, the occasional murmur of conversation kept respectfully low, the ambient hum of the ventilation system. It all blended together into a kind of white noise that was both present and soothing. Lyla thought about the day, the morning ceremony at the palace, the winding alleys of Bukchon, the comfort of the tofu stew at lunch, the sweetness of hotteok in Insadong, the peaceful facial in Myeongdong, the sunset from N Seoul Tower. And now this, the jimjilbang, where the city constant movement felt distant and irrelevant. Seoul had offered her exactly what she needed, beauty and culture, yes, but also rest, restoration, a reminder that taking care of oneself was not indulgent, but necessary. The jimjilbang embodied this perfectly, a place designed entirely around the idea that bodies and minds needed tending, that relaxation was its own worthy pursuit. She adjusted the small pillow under her head and let her eyes close. The warmth from the floor seeped into her back, her shoulders, her legs. Her body felt heavy and loose, completely relaxed. Her mind was quiet, thoughts drifting by like clouds, present, but not demanding attention. Nearby, she could hear the gentle breathing of other people resting. Someone turned over on their mat, the blanket rustling softly. A door opened somewhere, admitting a brief wave of cooler air before closing again. The sounds were peaceful, human, comforting in their ordinariness. Lyla let herself float in that pleasant space between waking and something deeper, where time seemed to slow and the boundary between self and surroundings became soft and permeable. The day experiences settled into her like layers of warmth, each one adding to the sense of deep contentment. She thought about tomorrow, about what other corners of Seoul she might discover. Maybe she had to visit one of the palaces she hadn't seen yet, or explore a different neighborhood, or find another good restaurant tucked away on a side street. But that was tomorrow's concern. For now, there was only this, the warm floor beneath her, the soft sounds of the jimjilbang around her, the feeling of her body, completely at rest. Seoul hummed its nighttime song somewhere beyond these walls. But here, in this quiet corner, there was only peace and warmth, and the gentle rhythm of people resting together, each in their own small world, all sharing the same space of calm.